I think we just have to stay relevant, right? And so I think that it's not just, you know, doing TikTok dances. That's not the answer. But it's staying, you know, staying on the top of your craft. Right. And not being told that, you know, this is the way you practice. Here's the algorithm that our healthcare system's adopted. You treat, you know, because then you really can just hire a mid-level provider and just have them follow an algorithm we just printed and handed to you, and just follow this and you'll be all set. No, I mean, we're the doctors. We have experience. There's a reason why we, you know, slaved away for 6 years, 7 years of training, trying to perfect a craft.
I just want to get controversial today. Are you ready to get controversial? I think let's come with the shits. No, you were a little scared.
No, man. I mean, you know, I have various faces I wear, so I'm ready for my controversial face. You know, we take all issues and anything that's important in medicine we discuss. So what do you got in the tell?
All right, well, why don't we just introduce our guest first? So welcome back to Recommended Daily Dose. I'm Dr. Clenton Coleman with Dr. Suraj Saggar. We have a friend, a colleague, probably the smartest man in the room currently, which I easily defer that to, Dr. Peter DeNoble. He's an orthopedic surgeon and is CEO and president of Modern Orthopaedics of New Jersey. And I want to talk about your past organization, but you were the founder and past president of New Jersey Doctor Patient Alliance, which was a group that advocates for patients' access, especially in New Jersey. So we want to get an idea of what, you know, an orthopedist does and what you do as a shoulder, arm down, hand specialist. You know, I see you on social media operating and stuff. That's pretty cool. You've always been forward thinking. So we want to get an idea of what you think of the social activism stuff going on, especially with the recent stuff. So first and foremost, welcome.
Welcome, Peter. Glad to have you. We'll have to talk about today for sure.
Yeah, I was looking at all the topics we were kind of talking about, and I was like, 25 minutes. This is we have to pack this one in. All right, but yeah, thank you guys for having me. This is great. I really appreciate the opportunity, and you know, I've been, you know, hard at work on a number of fronts, and
projects, yeah.
I appreciate your you know, having me on and to talk about some of that stuff. So as far as the Doctor Patient Alliance goes, you know, that's something that I, you know, had an idea for back when, you know, it was probably about 3.5 years ago when we were kind of in this process of independent doctors were lobbying for essentially a way to just maintain their leverage in negotiations. I mean, that's really all it really boils down to, is that if you can't pay your bills as a private practice doctor, you're then beholden to big hospital systems and private equity groups. So we really think, you know, and the group of people that started the group with me, really, we all believe the same thing, which is that we know, you know, we've you know, have gone through extensive training. We're experts in our field, and we know what's good and what isn't good for our patients, and we know what quality means. And it's hard to describe that in like a phrase or 3 sentences and a prospectus or something crazy like that. It's really, it's indescribable. It's, you know, being able to treat your patients the way you know they need to be treated, and really taking, you know, keeping the heart in medicine. And we were seeing that slowly slip away. And the more we lose our leverage to basically be able to survive as a private practice, as a small business, frankly, the more we were scared that our patients were going to sort of suffer the consequences, and we were going to essentially just slide into this sort of morass of burnout. So we kind of...
Just to clarify, so we're talking private practice. I mean, I'm in private practice, Clinton's in private practice, but you were basically talking kind of to answer the antithesis of the employed model, which, you know, you should touch upon, but I know I looked at the recent statistics. It's just incredible how many doctors now are employed versus even a few years ago. Their bargaining power with third-party insurance companies. And then you even mentioned private equity, which I know is happening a lot in dermatology and some other fields. I mean, so at the end of the day, this probably, and I think this is what most of us feel, is really not, it may be good for bottom lines of people other than physicians, but it's not good for patient care. Is that kind of what you, the summary there?
I think that everyone in healthcare that's not a doctor or a patient wins in this model.
Right.
You know, I mean,
So there's
a lot of other people.
Do you think that's that's not the hospital system? I think they're just following the lead of the insurances and trying to build their own leverage and taking what they can get. Like, you know, the middleman has always been the problem, but the middleman was always the payers and not necessarily the hospital system. I think the hospital systems are just probably a symptom of the problem.
Well, they maybe they once were, but at this point,
now it's crazy. But yeah,
it used to be hospitals. Now they're called healthcare systems, and they start to, you know, vertically integrate. So they're vertically integrating from the position of being the hospital now to the system, now to, you know, large self-insured models. Whereas the insurers, you look at the United, and they're basically, you know, they have Optum, they have these sort of multiple entities that are all sort of different, but they're all the same. Optum, United Health Group, United. Right. Oxford, you know, they have all these different entities, but they're all the same thing. And their profits are, you know, quarterly are over $10 billion. And what are they doing? They're just like, well, we got to get even more money. So what are they doing? They're vertically integrating, which means basically that, you know, they're starting to own doctors. And so when the insurance company owns the doctor, I mean, God help us, you know, I mean, we're going to be in big trouble. It's just, you know, we don't see an end in sight. And we identify the problem as a burnout and, you know, mental health issues related to, you know, doctors just doing endless amounts of paperwork and being frustrated that they're not valued and they're not able to deliver the care they want to their patients. And yet, there's been meaningful, you know, progress in that direction other than big healthcare systems saying, oh, we'll address that problem by hiring a chief wellness officer. So just adding to the C-suite. I mean, it's just, I personally haven't seen it. I don't know if you guys have.
Yeah.
In fact, you know, Clinton and I talk all the time about how there's this rise of physicians doing side gigs and entrepreneurship. I think this is all a reflection of just being fed up with their day job, which is unfortunate, right? Because we all spend so much time in training and education to get to this point. And then very quickly, this idea of burnout, I think it's been just hastened by COVID, certainly, but it's very real and very prevalent, whether you're on social media, what have you. And it's just amazing how physicians all seem to be very tired, which is, you know, unfortunate, like you said. But so tell us a little bit. I know you were the founder and past president. I mean, what are they doing now? I know that at one time they were looking at out-of-network benefits, Fair Payer Acts, and kind of modeling out of New York. I'm good friends with your colleague Stavros Kostoudios, and he was always kind of keeping me in the loop of what was going on. But what is going on with the organization now, or what are they advocating for?
Yeah, I mean, so I stepped down as president last summer, in the fall. So I'm just a general member now, but I'm an observer, and I certainly, you know, I'm eager to see that group continue to grow. You know, they're working on a lot of various things, you know, be it similar, you know, advocacy related to benefits, making sure that, and really the benefits issue is really just simply that patients are being sold a bundle of goods. They're being sold policies that don't actually cover what they think that they cover, or give them access to things that they think that they have access to until it's too late, or then there's a surprise. And those are literally surprise denials or various other things when it comes to your health. And we know that these are important benefits to have. And by the way, they haven't gotten any cheaper. It's not like you're getting less and paying less. You're getting less constantly, and you're paying more constantly. And then there's
costs have not driven down. That's the major thing here, right? That
no, they get captured at the top for the shareholders, and that's really like what you know. And by the way, there's all sorts of ways that this happens. It's not just the out of network thing, and now they're doing something else. It has to do with self-funded plans. It has to do with now a national surprise bill, and we're firmly on board with, you know, preventing surprise bills from, you know, getting to patients. Nobody wants this. None of us want to be surprised by a bill, be it a you know, a plumber, electrician, or a doctor. I mean, it's just not a thing that people want, is unexpected costs in this day and age. So, but yet we, you know, continue down this road. So, you know, it's nonstop. It's just like a constant battle. I'm so glad that so many other docs have joined us. We have over 300 members, and I'm so glad to see it kind of flourish and continue to play a strong role in sort of the advocacy of these issues.
Yeah, I think the problem I see, and we've talked about before, is that the environment, it's so toxic for doctors who are in private practices, that you're starting to see this exodus of doctors out of these private systems or out of these large groups into private practice or out of medicine completely, which we've talked about before, which I think
out of the state of New Jersey, right? Out of the state, that's a concern, I think, as well.
Or they just stop doing medicine and start doing other things. Dr. Saggar likes Pimple Popper MD. He loves watching her. So that was.
You may notice he's looking very shiny. He's got that new Botox. I think you just got Botox right before you got on.
I did, right? There was a joke about. Never mind.
I got it.
You got it. Chappelle show. Anyway, yeah. So I think what we see are these good physicians and healthcare providers doing non-clinical stuff, as a way to get away from the mundane and the toxicity of medicine. That's not why.
It's a creative outlet, right? Just to avoid burnout. I mean,
it's probably a mix of both things. Right. It's a mix of both things. What kind of non-clinical stuff are you engaged in? I see on your social media, you do a lot of, it's more like education, which I think is good. You're probably not trying to get away from ortho, but it's more probably building your brand and showing, a different side of doctors. I think is great. So
I think you have to diversify, right? So that's what a side gig does for you. It gives you maybe another little, stream of revenue. It also, I think there's something to be said for, the real solution, I think, to burnout per se, is like you mentioned, some of this outlet for creativity. And Clinton, that Clinton's a far better artist than I would ever be or could ever be. And I don't know if you've shown any of your works on the podcast, but you're
talking about rapping or
I didn't know you were doing that too. I just didn't know you artwork.
I didn't realize you were an artist. Is that true?
Remember the Fat Boys? That was part of that group.
Well,
before they broke up.
Fact. Maybe
I used to dabble in painting, not anymore though.
We got to see those.
He's kind of like the national.
It's impressive work. I mean, you shouldn't hide that. But
it's very important. Absolutely.
Jazz hands is this one.
Jazz hands, the whole thing. No, but Peter, I think you're right. One is diversification. Extra streams of income, not beholden upon, your quote unquote day job. But like you said, the creative outlet is very important. But I think it's also just keeping yourself independent. And I think my father was an internist, now retired. And towards the end of his career, he said, well, I may have been able to, close my shop up and take an employed approach and maybe make a little extra money in my twilight of my career. But he really had no interest working for someone else. He said, look, if you are used to being your own boss, setting your own rules, and practicing medicine for the joy of it, but at your own pace, there's nothing that beats that. And that's worth, much more than a financial, any kind of financial imprint that can be put onto that. So I wonder if you could just comment, why are so many physicians, young physicians now coming out of training, really foregoing the private practice model? I know like my dad's time, let's say in the late 70s, anyone that could, or almost anyone, would just come out, hang up their shingle and go to work up for themselves. It's just changed so dramatically and we seem to have lost our control. What are your thoughts on that?
So when I joined, the practice I joined 10 years ago, it was a mom and pop shop type of thing. There was no website, there was no branding, there was no logo, there was no Google AdWords, there was no billboards, nothing. It was just word of mouth, do good work, patients will come in your door. And that still holds true, but that's not good enough. That's not even close to good enough anymore. You're fighting, you're in a system now, it's basically like being in the harbor, with oil tankers, and you got a dinghy. So of course you're not prepared for that. So you have to build a bigger ship. And so in order to, when you come out of training, rightfully so, you should be focused on being, as a surgeon or any physician, you should be focused on your craft. You're being a safe surgeon or being making great medical decisions. But pretty quickly, once you get the hang of it, within the first 3, 4, or 5 years, you realize, wow, I'm doing really good work and I'm not getting the value out of it. In fact, I'm not even getting the satisfaction out of it because I'm spending more time documenting and covering myself for maybe medical legal purposes, but really more for billing and other masters that have nothing to do with patient care or patient outcomes or patient satisfaction. So I'm spending a minority of my time connecting with my patient and making them, whole.
Yeah, we spend so much of our time, it seems like padding our notes, to make sure the correct amount of review systems, making sure, quality assurance, like the way we write our notes, we document. And I understand why it's a necessary evil, but you're right. It's not why any of us went to medical school, whether it's to operate, to spend time with patients, patient counseling, diagnosis, treatment, whatever. I mean, it's, but I think also the astronomical debt, right, of medicines coming in now.
Yeah.
Right. Precludes them from saying, I'm going to now take a small business loan and open up my own shop.
Yeah. The output of, so I started my own practice a year and a half ago, literally 2 months prior to the pandemic starting and shutting down. So that was not opportune timing. Right. Mm-hmm. But we were fortunate enough to, have a following and a trusted patient population that came and we were treating, and we were able to make things work despite all that. And, but, as the managing partner and the CEO, I'm realizing, a lot of my time, at least half of my time now, is non-clinical. It's really, identifying how do we make patients, potential patients, more aware of what we do, more aware of what we do that's different than maybe other doctors, maybe the other doctor that do similar things that I do,
right.
We do. And that also a lot of my time is spent on the other end. So once we do services, once we do surgeries, how do we actually get paid what we're supposed to get paid? And that's a big problem that I don't know that many of us have great solutions for. We're getting underpaid. I mean, insurance companies and all their, sophistication are very good at, basically denying, low paying, no paying, right. Doing all sorts of things.
While you take all the risk for the procedure, right? People don't understand that. Yeah, part of the reason why this procedure costs this much, or one is the time, the effort, the expertise of the doctor, but also the balance of the risk that you took, right? So it's not necessarily just I do a surgery, you pay me a cost. There's so many underlying factors. And so you mentioned, branding. How is your practice different from like the mom and pop? Like, what did you notice about those old practices, which I agree with you, and how did that change in the way you practice medicine now?
Well, it hasn't changed the way I practice medicine, although, so that it's in addition to the way I practice medicine.
Okay.
So the branding and the marketing and stuff is just a way to keep patients aware of us in a sea of noise my competitors are on every billboard in Bergen County, you know what I mean? So I have to find, until I'm on billboards, if I ever am on billboards, I got to find other ways that people know. And of course, again, you do good work, people are still going to know about you, but you got to continue to make people aware of who you are, what your strategy, what your approach is, what your approach to healthcare, or even just, their problem is, and articulate that in a very basic, easygoing way that they understand that this is actually something that I feel comfortable with. And I like that, doctor.
That's actually the premise of our entire podcast, just right there. You summarized nicely. But just to take it one step further, so that we'll move on to social media, and what do you think physicians' roles are on social media? I think we are connected on LinkedIn, professional. Clinton dances around and does some strange things.
And you're dying to get on TikTok.
Compete with the millennials. I'm joking, but I'm friends with physicians are a generation or so below us, or younger than us, and they're on TikTok or Instagram and kind of talking about COVID, but like in a way to kind of get followers. And so I always think to myself, that doesn't seem very genuine for me, so I'll stick to LinkedIn, but I put stuff on Facebook. So I kind of figure out, how does a physician it's kind of foreign, and you have to maintain a certain level of respect and kind of professionalism. At the same time, you want to let your hair down, so to speak. I mean, not me necessarily, but more you. But how do you kind of view that? Do you keep LinkedIn for professional? Are you dancing in the OR on Instagram? I'm guessing not. But, what exactly? How do you approach that?
You're 100% right. There's definitely a line that you want to keep it professional. And, you know, I think that it's no different, right, than, I think it's no different than when you're in a room with a patient, right?
Right.
There's certain lines you don't talk about, you know, when you're first meeting a patient, you don't start talking about weird stuff. And it's the same thing, right? So I think, but you can incorporate a little bit more, you know, maybe a little bit more of your personality. Maybe you're at home, maybe people see into your living room a little bit more, and you have to be comfortable with that. Some people aren't comfortable with that. You just have to make a judgment call on that. But I think that this is the only way that we as physicians can kind of stay above the noise, because ultimately at the end of the day, if you're an administrator and you're, you know, you're in this big system and you have a brand behind you that you're driving, you're still not the doctor.
Right.
And you still don't have the expertise when things get, when you have a medical problem, you're not getting the call. It's the doctor. And so you're the doctor, you have to stay relevant. And this is just, I think, a way to continue to connect with people in a system where we're being kind of shoved into a box.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? How did that happen? I've seen these graphs, I'm sure you've seen the same thing, of the growth of medicine and doctors in this country, which is just a slight, you know, 10-degree curve. And if you look at the growth of administrators in general, which is just like straight up vertical line, you know, how did this happen where you have a senior vice president of everything in the hospital, but then, you know, and then the physicians now are just the physicians? I mean, it's a really amazing to me. I'll just example, my father, other doctors I respect, you know, who are older and maybe retired now, would tell me in the old days when the doctors, you know, med exec would meet or what have you, there'd be not even one administrator in the meeting, you know, because it's just doctors really ran the show. And now we fast forward now where I think they've been completely disenfranchised and have their power, again, power to do good, power to help medicine have taken away. So I just wonder, you know, how did this happen? You know, I mean, or do we just say this has happened and we just have to kind of, we can't join them, or, you know, just we have to be, as physicians, be advocates and not just be so bogged in doing EMR all day, you know, and this is why we're doing what we're doing right now. Maybe that's the answer. But any thoughts on that?
We probably lost years at the end of our lives because of the, you know, the amount of stress and cortisol and lack of sleep and various, you know, poor eating.
Also lack of hair. Also,
hair.
That's a very real issue that Clinton likes to talk about every episode. So I'm gonna beat him to it. So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's it. I mean, we put in the hours, and those are meaningful. I mean, we know that. That's part of being an expert, putting in those 10,000 hours, right? I mean, it's if you don't have the hours, you are not going to have the complement of experience that will give you the best decision. And that's what we can do still as physicians. So I think we're irreplaceable, at least for the short term, until they come up with some AI bot that
I was just going to ask you about AI. I read some things, you know, radiology, pathology, even dermatology or dermopathology, how AI is rapidly, you know, achieving parity and perhaps will even progress beyond.
Well, I think certain specialties it'll be appropriate, but
well, instead of replacing, wouldn't it just be complementary? Okay, it frees you up.
We already use it. We already use it now. Like even when you use Google MD and you type in a diagnosis, there's an algorithm that spits
or
it out.
Or a robot if you're doing you know, robotic prostatectomies or what have you. I mean, I think it's just complementary, right?
I want to get back to the
far out stories of AI replacing everything in medicine, but I think we're far enough from that time. We don't have to worry about that quite yet. But one thing I think we should talk about.
Let's transition, because I want to follow up what you talked about as doctors having boundaries. Like, you know, I think doctors are well-rounded, but do you think there should be a boundary as far as things they speak out on, like social issues? You know, we always, should we just shut up and doctor, or should we speak about stuff, especially as it relates to healthcare, because healthcare is not remiss from all the things that happen outside as far as feminism, racism, you know, gender bias, all that stuff. So, you know, is there a line that we can't cross? I'm of the belief that the patient will like you not no matter what, but if you're honest and true to yourself, then everything will be okay.
I think that that's it.
Big question.
Heavy question. We'll make it light towards the end. It's another heavy question. That's true.
No. I mean, it's an absolutely appropriate.
It's more of a discussion, not even a question.
No. I mean, I don't know. I don't have the right answers. I just have thoughts on it, and I think that, having been, kind of in this,
Well, yeah, I guess, should we use our platform to speak out on things that traditionally we wouldn't speak out?
Right.
Well, look, I think that as doctors, we're looked to, whether we know it or not, or like it or not, as role models, as trusted resources for, because, I think generally speaking, we're people who investigate, we're students of the scientific method. We look up, things that we do, we research it, we debate it. And I think we should do the same thing for other issues before we, see a headline and share it. I think that's where we have to be careful on social media. I've been very tempted to just like see something, import my natural biases onto that headline and then flip it and be like, look at this crazy thing. And I think that's a natural urge that we all have, and a lot of people do that. But I do think that to the point of boundaries and lines and ways that we have to conduct ourselves, that goes for us on social media as well, is that when you get behind something, you better have done your research, done a deep dive, and really be able to defend your position, and understand where it sits in the grand scheme of everything that's being discussed, so that you can, again, be more than just a puppet for, one side or another or any of that stuff. There's always nuance, and we should, I think, as doctors, should be sitting in the side of nuance. And
I like that.
So you're saying doctors shouldn't have a podcast about structural racism with two white doctors, not experts in the field, and giving their opinion? I think that's probably.
So you're alluding, obviously, to.
So do you want to tell the story?
Well, you're alluding, just for anyone out there, to the recent controversy per se. But we always think that you can make lemonade out of lemons. So AMA had a podcast, and there was a concern that the host was not necessarily accepting or cognizant or recognizing the idea of systemic racism in medicine, and saying, no, it's not an issue we should be talking about. So that raised a bit of controversy, raised a bit of.
Well, wait. So I think the problem was that it was supposed to be a podcast about structural racism, whether it exists in medicine. The tweet, it was promoted by a tweet that said a physician cannot be racist. I'm not quoting it.
What I will tell you is there was some good that came of it. Then the AMA subsequently issued a very long statement, which I read most of it, not all of it, basically acknowledging and then pledging to improve and how they might improve. And I think this, is good for everyone. This is not good for just one minority. This is good for all physicians, for all mankind, all humankind. But this wasn't necessarily met with equivocal acceptance by all members of AMA. And that's kind of where we are now. There are some people who perhaps felt that they were being slighted, or people that felt that this was unfair bias against, or reverse racism, if you can believe it. So I think that's, we can touch upon that, but that's where kind of the genesis of this issue, the podcast, the controversy, the response by the AMA, that's why I look at taking a bad thing, lemon, and making lemonade, and saying, no, we're going to have a very comprehensive introspection, and this is what we're going to do about it. And they laid out like a whole 15-point plan, but that wasn't necessarily taken well by all members of the AMA. Obviously, AMA is a heterogeneous organization. It's not just doctors. Doctors of different ages, different backgrounds, different ethnicities, and so that's kind of where we are today. Where even though New England Journal of Medicine and others, evidence-based medicine journals will have said there have been, numerous scholarly research articles saying that this bias does exist, this has existed, that there's been issues within medicine of the Tuskegee, airman experiment for one, but just numerous things, and the distrust in certain communities. There's people who still don't necessarily acknowledge it. So obviously, it's a very loaded question. This is not supposed to be a question. This is supposed to be a discussion. And clearly, there's no right answer. We're not going to solve this issue right now, but at least if we keep the conversation going, eventually we'll get to that point. So I think this is what Clinton had kind of wanted to say, as physicians, should we be staying in our lane, just talking about high blood pressure, COVID, and orthopedic issues, or no, we should branch out because, I like the line, it's not my line, but racism is a public health issue. And I think it's true. And we clearly have seen that, in the last year or more with all the events unfolding. But your thoughts on, and again, this is not meant to put you on the spot. This is just a conversation.
No, of course. I've been thinking a lot about these issues. I mean, for a long time, but I think obviously for all of us as a society, especially in the United States, since George Floyd and everything that happened. We really were, we're shut down. This happened. We're all paying attention from our busy lives. And so it was actually kind of this perfect storm of a moment that kind of brought to light, not necessarily, I think some progress has sort of moved, but I think that we've had this illusion. I've had this illusion, and maybe others have, that we are living in this time where yesteryear, these terrible racist policies existed, and look at us now. And what we're actually realizing is that, we're living in an era of innuendo and euphemism that's, once you kind of shake clear for a minute, you realize that these aren't vestiges of the past. In fact, these are well-established, systems that are in place right now.
Right.
And what we see, with the New England Journal article back in August, I think it was last year, when this attention was being paid to these, various algorithms and ways to risk stratify and to classify, races of people as though that they're different genetic species, and they can somehow have different, organs that behave differently and need to be treated differently and need to be referred at different rates to specialists for higher level of care. And we're doing ourselves, I think, a disservice as physicians without challenging these notions and trying to, really get better. And so I think, as opposed to, I don't necessarily think that doctors need to sit out on social media and constantly, plant polls and take stands necessarily. But I think we as doctors, getting back to that idea of critical thinking and analysis, we really have to challenge assumptions that we've maybe made and probably have made erroneously, attributing things to race and we just learned about this race norming in the NFL like yesterday. Like, what the hell is that? Like, and I'm learning about this. Like, this is there, and the NFL is using this as a way to not pay the players, the black players, for brain injuries when, because they're saying that the average intelligence level or cognitive functioning of black people are less than white people, so they don't quite meet the spread, so they don't get a payout. I mean, that's just absolutely ridiculous. And we have to continue to dredge up these things and sort of stress them and try to move forward in a way with real facts. Right.
I think the hardest problem with this is, and we saw from that podcast, is that, we really don't make the distinction between structural racism and just being, personally racist, right? So most people don't think that they're racist. Personally, because, right. Their neighbor's black or whatever, they play golf with their Indian friend or whatever. But we all live in this system which that was founded on, especially in medicine. Medicine has always perpetuated this, like you said, this genetic discrepancy between people who are non-white and white, and that's still perpetuated today. We're still talking about kidney disease and GFR as whether that's accurate. We're talking about blood pressure, and you mentioned the CT with NFL players. So that's unfortunately endemic in medicine, and you could be the least racist person, as Donald Trump likes to say, physician, but once you're in this system, that we're all culpable in the system, and we all have to do something regardless of where we stand to try to improve the system, because
people don't realize that system exists, right? So like you said, right. People may say, I'm the least racist person, I have no racist tendencies, but they don't realize, unconsciously, that there is this system in play that has been in play, as Peter mentioned, not just in yesteryear, but continues forthright even today.
Can you call it racism? I mean, because you can't even start the conversation anymore if you call it racism. You have to call it something else.
Yeah, but it's we have to acknowledge it's uncomfortable probably for a lot of people. But I think if people come together and say it's good not just for black people or brown people, it's good for all people. It's good, right? It's good for all our patients.
But isn't that common sense though? Like, isn't that AMA report about health disparities and improving quality initiatives? That sounds like a no-brainer to me, right? Like, that's something that would benefit everyone, health-wise, economically, socially, spiritually. But
Yeah.
then you get this pushback from the House of Delegates, like, it's reverse racism, or it's like the old boys club they want to hold on to these old vestiges, even when they're shooting themselves in the foot as far as progress. It doesn't make sense to me. But
I think this now we see that the most recently the editor-in-chief of JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association, just stepped down. So I think this controversy and these issues and ramifications are still going to be widespread. I just hope that eventually it's not just a controversy, but like you said, a good comes out of it. I mean, at least the conversation is going and continues, and then you're going to have these counterpoints. But I hope that the wave still goes in the right direction. I tell you, usually Clinton's very jovial and we're joking. So he is heavy today. Is it the rain? Is it what getting you down? I mean, we can't end it here on such a heavy note. I'm
channeling my Al Sharpton. Sorry.
Is it brother? I didn't realize we have brother Al Sharpton. We have to joke. It's okay. We joke a lot. But I think, and all kidding aside, I think these are very important conversations. And when we started, right before we started recording, we told Peter, man, we got a lot to jam in. And we did. I mean, already in 40 minutes, we've talked on a whole host of topics, but I think that's because there's so much going on in medicine, and irrespective of COVID, right? We're not talking about COVID, thankfully, after a year and a half, or GFRs or even ortho. We're talking about so many other issues. So I think we clearly answered our question that do physicians stay in the lane? The answer is no, at least not for us, right? We have a lot to discuss and lots to talk about. Peter, we want to thank you for coming on, but not to be so heavy, just tell us a little bit about some personal things about you, and also what you like to do in your free time, if you have free time. And of course, since we're talking about social media, where people can find you, what your handles are, et cetera.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for having me. This has been great. I think we need to have more of these discussions. I think that this can't be just, one podcast. It should be a series. It should be, and again, it should be in the thread of what we talk about with everyone. I don't know, maybe I'm guilty of this with, friends, but I always tend to, want to talk about this stuff because this is what's important in life. This is how we're going to move forward as a society and as as humanity. I mean, how else are you going to leave a world for your kids that has moved and incrementally improved? So without these conversations and education, what are we doing here? So, but as far as
let me cut you off a minute. Speaking of race, did you know that do you have an Apple phone? Siri, you can change the voice to an Indian voice. So the past week, I've had this Indian voice, a Siri. It's the most amazing thing I've heard of.
Is it very soothing? Not unlike my voice. Is that?
There's a girl or the guy. I use the guy. Maybe to remind me of you if you put your Indian accent.
It's no concern of ours. That's fine. I'm happy that our people can bring you joy.
Is that racist? No.
I don't think so. I mean, we also don't want to live in a world where you can't say anything, you can't joke around.
And you can't laugh, right? Yes.
You got to be able to laugh. And I think, hey, I don't know, we're going to let Peter have the last word, but I will say that you realize when people laugh at each other about certain things, I've always felt this way, then you can have three people of different ethnicities, and they realize, man, they're dealing with the same stuff, laughing about the same things happening in their lives. And it just kind of makes that whole universal, experience relevant. So I mean, I hope we don't get, that we don't take comedy and laughter out of it. So you enjoy your Indian male series program. I'm happy you're finding pleasure with it. But Peter, tell us again where we can find you. And also, I know you like to hike. I like to hike as well. We talked about Clinton jazzercising in his jazz hands, but we were actually going to go for a hike right after this, but now it's pouring rain. So, I mean, where do you like to go hiking? Just tell us any little treasures you might know in New Jersey.
You know what? I don't get out as much as I wish I could, but we've been, we live, in Wayne, and so we're actually pretty close to a lot of good hiking. There's actually a place like Northern Green Forest is really nice. It's really crazy how close it is, yet it's like you're you don't have to travel that far. You travel 10 minutes.
Right. So. Yeah. People always think of New Jersey as just like the Turnpike and the Parkway. I mean, I live in Ridgewood, Clinton lives in Allendale. So we are living in Western Bergen County, or, you're in Wayne, but there's an amazing amount of trails and the Rampo Mountains and places to go. And actually, I would say COVID for me made me kind of, because we couldn't do much else besides hike, it just kind of forced us to get out there and find all these little places. So, I mean, it's actually, there's always little gems all over the place. You have to just look for
everywhere. So, but yeah, otherwise I'm my other hobby is just being a content creator now.
Oh, nice.
But trying to figure, you're always trying to think about what's interesting, and it takes a lot of creativity to kind of come up with things that might be interesting. And the nice thing about social media is like you kind of test out various things and see what people are interested in and kind of go from there. But yeah, I think that other than that, just hanging out with the kids, being involved, and that's very important. You got to be involved with your kids, no matter how busy you are. You got to find time. I think we've seen mentors, the old guard in medicine who never, spend time with their kids, and then, they had issues, and you never want to repeat that sort of thing. So I always, try to keep that perspective, and that's kind of it.
And where can we find you? I mean, I know you're very active on LinkedIn, which is great.
Yeah. I'm on, so LinkedIn's probably my biggest platform, just because I started it so long ago. I think it's a great platform for professionals, for doctors, a lot of interested, colleagues out there. So Peter DeNoble, MD, basically, if you look me up. And then on Instagram, we're really trying to develop that a little bit. Peter DeNoble, MD there, same as on TikTok. And,
So you do have a TikTok.
Oh yeah, man. Come on. It's very similar content. I actually got banned from TikTok. It's a different story, but we'll talk about that later. No, I mean, listen, it was the same stuff I'm putting on Instagram and LinkedIn, but apparently TikTok doesn't like watching, slice down the back of their head. Once it's open, they don't care, but the knife to skin is a no-no apparently. So
you weren't doing a Bollywood dance like Dr. Saggar does.
No. It's part of our culture, it brings people joy. So it's
that probably would get you banned.
Actually, I think my dog, my golden doodle, has a Instagram or TikTok page, so look out for that one in the future. So
all right.
Dr. Peter, we want to thank you so much for coming on. In all seriousness, this was great because we were able to touch upon so much in a short period of time. We do hope you'll come back with us again, but we really appreciate your expertise. And the fact that you are not only a brilliant surgeon, but you are socially conscious. I think that for us, because that, Clint and I, despite all our back and forth and bickering sometimes, it's extremely important to us. And that's kind of why we started this podcast, to talk about socially relevant issues within medicine, about medicine, encompassing medicine. And the way you spoke, how eloquently you portrayed your thoughts, we are very much appreciative of that. So thank you for sharing it with our audience.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Let's keep the conversation going,
So you have to come back for sure.
All right, guys.
Until next time, for audience out there, you recommend Daily Dose. We'd love for you to subscribe, rate, listen. In the meantime, find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Until next time, I'm Dr. Suraj Saggar, and my sidekick and co-host, Dr. Clinton Coleman. Until next time, be well. Peter, thank you so much. We really appreciate that.
Let me try this. Let me try this real quick. Hey Siri, play recommended Daily Dose.
Okay. Isn't there for
a non-entity at this point?
I'm Siri.
Right.
Choose the voice you'd like me to use.
You see, Clinton had a lot of extra time on his hands.
I'm Siri. Choose the voice you'd like me to use.
Hey Siri, play recommended Daily Dose.